Hello everyone, welcome to the Cinema Crave channel. Today, we're gonna dive into the analysis and breakdown of the movie Arrival. A large part of this video talks about physics and the concept of the universe. I'm giving you a spoiler warning for Arrival, and if you're very strict about spoilers, I'll also warn you about Interstellar by Nolan, since some of the examples I'll be using come from that film. We're gonna explore why, in the end, Louise didn't change her choice. Or, more specifically, we'll fully answer in this video the question of how physicists say that at this very moment, both the past and the future also exist. Let's jump right into it, because there's a lot to talk about. The story of the film wants to discuss the physical concept of time, showing that all points in time exist simultaneously and that time itself is in complete balance. That's why the movie was released on 11/11, a date that, no matter how you read it, remains the same, symbolizing constancy. The story begins with 12 spaceships arriving on Earth and positioning themselves in 12 different locations. They don't say anything, they just hover in the air. The number 12 points to the clock and a complete cycle of time, and right here, we realize that these 12 ships complete one another. As for their purpose, we'll learn that later. Naturally, at first, people don't know what's going on, and so the world starts heading toward chaos. To depict this chaos, the film shows footage of street protests in Iran, and to convey the public's fear, it shows images of Friday prayers in Tehran. One of the 12 ships lands in the United States. The government sends a linguist named Louise, whose first name means brave warrior. Her surname is Banks, which means border. So, taken together, her name becomes a brave warrior at the border, symbolizing her role standing between humans and extraterrestrials. She is also going to have a colleague who is a physicist. His name is Ian, which means a gift from God. In this story, we come to realize who God actually is. The spaceships are shown as black objects, shaped like a lens resembling the lens of the human eye, and in cinema, the eye is always a symbol of awareness. So, in this story, the aliens are meant to bring us awareness. There's an important low-angle shot inspired by one of the most famous shots in cinema history, Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. In 2001, the black object was a machine, a piece of technology from the extraterrestrials, bringing with it knowledge and wisdom. That shot was framed to show that the sun represents awareness emerging from darkness. Here, the spaceship does exactly the same thing. Once again, the message is clear. Everything inside this spacecraft is meant to take humanity to a new level of awareness. The physicist and the linguist then go to meet the extraterrestrials. The way this first encounter is shown is very important. We see a tunnel that ends in light, and when they finally see the aliens, the image is designed to look very much like a cinema screen. It's as if what the extraterrestrials want to tell our protagonists is the very same thing the film itself wants to tell its audience. Symbolically, this also carries another meaning. In literature and art, a tunnel that ends in light has always been a metaphor for the discovery of truth. It's an international metaphor, used all over the world. Why? Because it exists in the human subconscious. People who have had near-death experiences often report that the final image they see before dying is a dark tunnel with light at its end. Even doctors and scientists have been able to explain scientifically why people see such a scene, and that's why this experience has entered into art. The aliens we see are given two names. One is called Abbott, and the other Costello. Why? Because these names are inspired by two comedians whose comedic style worked this way. Whenever they spoke with each other, they constantly misunderstood one another, creating humorous situations. Since the characters in the story don't understand the aliens' language, the filmmakers gave them the names of those two comedians. These beings are inspired by squids. They don't have mouths, they have 7 legs, and like octopuses, they release ink. They communicate using this ink. Each of their 7 legs has 7 fingers, forming the shape of a 7-pointed star, a symbol in literature and art that has always represented intelligence or beings beyond the ordinary human state. For example, in other films, the symbol of witches is often associated with the 7-pointed star when they cast spells. So here, the filmmakers wanted to show us that we are dealing with beings whose intelligence surpasses that of humans. The first encounter isn't very useful. It's not clear at all what these beings are saying. Their language is completely unknown until Louise decides to establish communication physically, not verbally. The moment Louise touches the glass, we see a flash forward in the film. Something strange happens. Louise remembers the future. It becomes clear that these extraterrestrials don't experience time the way we do. They can see the future. And here, the film tells us that at this very moment, we exist in the past, present, and future, all coexist simultaneously. But how? The movie highlights a real physical truth about our universe. This isn't just science fiction. It's similar to what Christopher Nolan often does in his films. The future constantly influences the past. But how is such a thing possible? How can the future exist if the present hasn't happened yet? In short, the reality is that our universe is not the way we perceive it. It is like this. But since our brain only perceives 3 dimensions and struggles to comprehend the 4th dimension, we see the world this way. We perceive length, width, and height. For us, images are 3-dimensional. For example, if we watch an apple falling from a certain height, we can clearly understand its length and width, and we can also clearly perceive how fast it's falling in height. But the truth is that our universe is 4-dimensional. This apple is also moving forward in the dimension of time, but we don't see time. Each moment is like a physical slice, like a sheet of paper. These sheets are stacked one after another, and while the apple is moving in those 3 dimensions with a certain speed, it is also moving among these sheets, that is, through the 4th dimension. We only perceive time, we cannot see it. In essence, our universe is like the way Christopher Nolan showed it in interstellar moments placed next to each other in sequence. Now, the question you might be asking is, what is time exactly? Why does physics need something called time? Why does our universe need time? We understand length, width, and height. Why? Because space exists and we move within it. But physically, time must also exist for events to be recorded in the 4th dimension. If the 4th dimension didn't exist, the world would be like a frozen film. No events would be recorded, and the universe could not create a stable space in which changes could occur. But if we have something called space-time and a 4-dimensional reality, then changes on Earth can be recorded. This allows special conditions on Earth to emerge, enabling more complex molecules to form, and for changes to be recorded until ultimately, it all leads to the emergence of life on Earth. If time didn't exist, the genetic mutations that occur in the DNA of living beings would never be recorded, and these mutations could never gradually lead to self-aware, intelligent beings like humans. That's why, from a physical standpoint, the 4th dimension exists in the universe. This means that our bodies aren't simply born at one specific geographical point and limited to moving around in space. Just as we cannot leave the Earth, we are also born on one of these specific sheets of time and have no way to escape them. All of us are moving forward between these sheets at a fixed speed. Now, the question that arises is, why are we always moving forward? Why, unlike space where we can go in any direction we like, can't we move in time however we wish? The reason lies in one of the fundamental laws of our universe, the 2nd law of thermodynamics. It states that the universe must always move toward disorder, never in reverse. Because of this physical law, you and all other objects in the universe are always moving forward between these sheets. The next question that arises is, does something called the present actually exist? In other words, is there one particular sheet that we're on right now, the one where we're sitting and watching the Cinema Crave channel, that counts as the unique present moment for the universe? To answer this question, let's first examine something else. Let's see whether all objects in the universe move between the sheets of time at the same speed, or if each object moves at a different speed. Once we understand this, the previous question answers itself, and the shocking truth is exactly here. The speed at which each object moves through time is different. Various objects throughout the universe move between these sheets at different speeds. One factor that affects this speed is gravity. Gravity doesn't just keep us attached to the Earth, it also affects the passage of time. Why? Because the Earth is like it's sitting in a pool that is filled with space. Space itself is a physical entity, and one of its key properties is that when a high-density object is placed in it, space bends toward that object. This is the natural property of space. And remember, space has 4 dimensions. So not only does the Earth bend space in length, width, and height, creating gravity that keeps everything attached to the ground, but it also bends time. That is the 4th dimension. What does it mean that time bends? It means that when objects are on Earth, because space is curved, they travel a longer path. In other words, time is extended, or more accurately, time slows down. The greater the curvature you are in, the slower your movement between the sheets of time. That's why all of us on Earth move at a constant speed through the sheets of time due to the curvature caused by the Earth and the Sunday. Now, if one of us leaves Earth and goes to a planet influenced by a star whose gravity is different from our sun, for example, larger and more massive, then the passage of time for that person slows down relative to us. Just like in Nolan's Interstellar, Cooper was on Earth and his daughter was a teenager. When he went to a planet near a black hole, because of the black hole's high density, space-time was more curved for him, and his speed between the sheets of time slowed down. So when he returned to his spaceship just 1 hour later and checked his message log, he saw that his daughter and her university professor, and later in the film, when he went near the black hole again, his daughter had grown into an elderly woman with many children and grandchildren. Now, the question arises, which of these three versions of Cooper's daughter exists in the present? The answer is none of them. For the universe, there is no concept of a global clock or a universal now. The universe is like a book whose pages are already written. All of them exist right now. What we need to understand is that as physical beings, we are experiencing time, but time itself isn't happening. You are a conscious, intelligent entity, and like any other mass in the universe, you move through the sheets of time according to the laws of physics. The difference is that you, as a self-aware human, experience consciousness like a passenger on a boat. Your physical body is like the boat, and your consciousness is the passenger. Your intelligence is not bound by time or space, but just like the boat must follow the river's path, you as the passenger have no choice but to go wherever the boat goes. Your body, like any other object in the universe, is subject to the laws of physics, so you are forced to move forward in time at a specific speed. This does not mean that the universe itself is moving at that speed. Rather, all of us on Earth move together at a constant speed through the sheets of time. But the universe itself is like a book with countless pages, and there is no such thing as a single present page. This means that if a conscious human, when they die, were fortunate enough to leave the universe and observe their life from the outside, they would no longer see their life as a series of sequential moments. Instead, they would perceive their entire life as a single, connected whole. They would understand that there are infinitely many pages of time, and that they were born on one of these pages and lived through a few. While infinitely many pages existed before and after them, now the question arises, are there multiple versions of me? Does my child self, adult self, and elderly self exist simultaneously? The answer is no. From the perspective of someone observing the universe from the outside, your identity and personality cannot be confined to a single moment. Your entire life, from birth to death, exists as one continuous whole. There are not multiple simultaneous versions of you. From this, we understand that traveling back in time to change the past in a way that alters the future is practically impossible. The path a person's life has taken cannot be altered. So you can see that from the moment the Big Bang occurred, a universe came into existence that resembles a block. Within this block, the birth of the world is fixed, and in the exact same block, the death of the world is also fixed and determined. Then you might think to yourself, well, when the universe came into being, these pages of time must have formed one by one, stacking on top of each other, since events have to happen in sequence, right? But outside the universe, time doesn't exist at all. That's why events don't happen one after another. They all happen at once, and the universe exists as one unified whole from beginning to end, created all at once. Now the question that arises is, if everything came into existence in that first moment and all events were recorded at that same moment, then free will doesn't exist, right? Everything would be predetermined. But that's not the case at all. Time exists precisely so that free will can exist. Time exists to create cause and effect relationships. Every event that happens on one of these pages is the cause of the event on the next page. The formation of galaxies, the birth of the sun, the emergence of life on Earth, all of these have physical causes. The cause of each lies in the previous pages. Your own birth had a cause, and the path of your life is also shaped by the decisions you're making in between these pages, directing your life toward a particular direction, just like you now have the will to stop this video and not watch the rest of it. Of course, we should also mention that there are some scientists who support determinism, They argue that the decisions people make are themselves rooted in physical causes. This is something that Westworld tried to show, but later, with the development of quantum physics, this idea became much less dominant among scientists. Why? Because humans realized that at very small scales, in quantum physics, some events are completely random. Physics even formalized this with the principle of uncertainty. That's also why, in the last 10 years or so, cinema has moved away from themes focused on determinism, and fewer films like Arrival have been made. Instead, many films now explore parallel worlds. Quantum physics is changing our understanding of physical reality. This is also why Westworld, in its later seasons, tries to structurally change its entire story, because the block universe theory is itself evolving alongside advancements in quantum physics. Now you can understand why scientists say that at any given moment, the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. And now you can also understand why humans write language linearly, because we ourselves live linearly and move linearly through the pages of time. That's also why words must be arranged one after another to convey meaning. Now, in the story, we see that these extraterrestrials have a circular language. This means it doesn't matter where you start a sentence, you can read it from any point, and it's correct. You don't have to read it piece by piece. The symbol they create conveys the meaning of the entire sentence all at once. Here we realize that in the film, language is essentially a metaphor for how we perceive time. The aliens' language is circular and even depicts a complete clock, because their perception of time is not linear. We understand that these beings have evolved brains that can perceive the dimension of time itself. They are not like us. As a result, they know the future but cannot change it, and they execute what they see precisely, which we'll explain later in the story. You'll understand why. The extraterrestrials come to communicate, but their language is unfamiliar to humans. People make mistakes in translation. The aliens say, "We want to give you a gift." Humans, however, interpret this as a proposal for weapons. That's why all 12 locations panic and cut off communication, fearing that another country might accept weapons from the aliens and then attack the others. The news spreads to the media, and riots erupt across the cities. Some soldiers, influenced by the media, disobey orders from their superiors and plant a bomb on the alien spaceship. When the bomb explodes, Abbott and Costello behave differently because they know the future. Costello escapes before the explosion, but Abbott stays. Why? He wants to save Louise, sacrificing himself in the process. This demonstrates selflessness and shows how the aliens perceive the future. When they encounter a situation they have already foreseen, they make the exact same decision, accepting what they have seen through their own free will. Physics, however, tells us that the future cannot be changed. It states that even if you lived this life 100 times, you would follow the same path each time. So, in this part of the sci-fi story, no being actually knows its future. Why? Because that would violate the second law of thermodynamics. This is why understanding it is somewhat difficult for us. Louise goes to meet the extraterrestrials directly and realizes that what they were calling a gift is actually the ability to see the future. She understands that these beings can see 3,000 years ahead, which they need in order to survive with the help of humans. From this, we also understand that these beings must live at least 3,000 years. Because at least one of them has lived long enough to witness the future. Knowing they have such long lives, we realize how significant death is for them, and we understand the immense selflessness shown by Abbott in sacrificing himself. And the point is, humans have a problem. In 3,000 years, they are likely to bring about their own extinction. Why? Because if they continue on the current path, technological progress will create weapons so powerful that humans will eventually go to war and annihilate themselves. This is essentially the message of the film. The filmmakers want to convey that if we continue on the same trajectory, we will face catastrophic consequences, much like the soldier who misunderstood the situation and planted a bomb on the alien spaceship. The solution, they want to show the gift the aliens give to Louise, and what the filmmakers aim to give to the audience is revealed in the final scene. When Louise realizes this truth from the aliens, she experiences another flash forward and recalls the future. She sees that at a banquet, a flag is displayed on the wall not for humans, but with the aliens' language inscribed on it, creating a universal language. Humans are cooperating with each other. This is the kind of collaboration that was missing in the scene where Costello escaped. A huge amount of information was shown to Louise all at once. What was this information? It was the aliens' grammar. If humans could decode this information, they would be able to see their own future. The key point is that this information was given incompletely. It was divided into 12 parts, with each spaceship providing 1/12 of the information. Humans had to cooperate to receive the full gift. Here, people realized that if they learn the aliens' language, they can save themselves from the grim fate that awaits them, and the only way to do so is by working together. But how could Louise convey this truth to the others? She remembers that at the same banquet, the commander of China's armed forces comes to her and says that she directly called his phone and told him the last words his wife spoke on her deathbed, something that no one else in the world knew. What were the words? His wife had said that in wars, there are no victories, only widows. This sentence reduces conflict among humans. People, while keeping their national identities and hanging their country flags on the walls, also gather under a single unified flag, forming a cohesive whole. This is the message of the film. Humans, because of limitations in communication and their instinct for self-preservation, are at risk of destroying themselves as technology advances unless they learn to cooperate. To prevent such a future, people need to think ahead and strengthen unity and communication. At the beginning of the film, there's a repeated line. It says that civilization was built when language was created. This emphasizes that the path to building a stronger civilization lies in establishing stronger communication and unifying nations. In the story, this connection is portrayed metaphorically through the aliens' language, which evokes the age-old problem of the Tower of Babel. Yet the story's message doesn't stop there. Louise didn't just see humanity's fate. She also saw her own life through to the end. She saw that she would have a child and that her child would die young from illness. Despite this, she still acted with courage, precisely in the way destiny dictated, accepting her future, choosing to marry, and enjoying every moment of her life while coming to terms with her child's death. Now you might ask, why didn't she try to change her own path? What you just saw reflects Nietzsche's philosophy regarding life, specifically the concept known as the eternal return. This philosophy even has its own Wikipedia page under that title. If you want to explore further, you can read it there. The concept of the eternal return says that a complete human being is someone who, even if they were forced to go back 100 times and relive the exact same life, would have no complaints and would embrace life wholeheartedly. What does this mean? It means that suffering is an inseparable part of life. We all experience pain in this world. Another point is that there is no such thing as justice in the world. So don't torment yourself asking why these misfortunes have happened to you, or why your life is so hard. Instead, try to make the best decisions, embrace life with open arms, and enjoy its brief moments of happiness. Why? Because life itself is immensely valuable. Essentially, philosophy tells us that life is precious, that the fact that you, as a conscious and intelligent being, have had the chance to live with awareness for even a short time in a universe this vast is reason enough to endure all the hardships. A successful person is one who lives in such a way that even if they had to repeat this life from the very beginning, they would be proud to experience it again. This means doing everything you can to be your best self. Then, if suffering does come your way, you no longer need to grieve over it. And this same concept of living in the moment and cherishing the brief joys of life is what we also see in Louise's experience of raising her daughter. Those who have watched the animation Arcane know that it carried a similar message. It said that our flaws shape our identity. And for those who watched the anime Attack on Titan, its ending also tried to convey the same message, that the meaning of life is found in those simple moments when children were together playing with a ball. The final scene of the film was also very interesting. Amy Adams delivered an absolutely brilliant performance. She embraced the man she was supposed to marry, even though she knew their story would end in sadness. At the same time, you could see both joy and sorrow on her face. In the end, Louise does have a child and names her Hannah because of all the experiences she had. Hannah is the only name that reads the same forwards and backwards, just like the aliens' language. And when the film ends, instead of the usual word end shown in cinema, the word arrival appears. It's as if at the end of the movie the word beginning is written. The entire film itself, just like the aliens' language, had no beginning and no end. It all conveyed its meaning at once, as a whole. Well friends, that's it for today's video. I hope it was useful for you. Honestly, the film was incredibly beautiful. Thank you so much for watching this video until the end. Don't forget to like the video, and until the next one, goodbye.